the rest of us.
Yeah, this is
Jason, you up?
Well, I didn't hear what you were talking about.
I'll tell you.
okay. Hey, not now.
Of course.
Please. Please. All right. We got enough to go over right here. All right. Call the meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the budget evaluation team for Wednesday, April 17th. Looks like all offices are present. Notice the meeting was properly posted on April 15th. We've got one item for discussion today, and that is a recommendation to, or not to, transfer an amount not to exceed $1 million from general fund reserve, general fund reserve to employee benefits. John? Sure. Is here to have a discussion.
Pass out.
And first of all, I'm sorry for the late notice on the special meeting. Got an email from John, talked to Christy, and we needed to do this kind of last minute so we get something on before the budget board tomorrow.
Well, I'll move to recommend transferring $1 million to benefit.
Is this the same as you emailed me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second.
Go second.
Okay. We got a motion and a second to recommend transfer of $1 million from general fund.
I'm sorry, I completely missed all of that. Because we're moving so fast.
Jason made a motion.
You need to
Christy.
acknowledge the receipt of that first before.
Oh, good.
That's it.
Yeah, was that included in your motion, Mr. Nelson?
No.
Well, we got a motion currently on the floor, so let's go ahead and take this up, and then if you'd like to make a motion after this one is dispensed with, Christy seconded to make a recommendation to transfer. Okay, we got a motion and a second to recommend a transfer of $1 million from general fund reserve to employee benefits. Is there any discussion? Any comments?
What's our current balance?
Current cash balance is $84,000.
No, in the general fund reserve.
1.6. 1,647,000. I don't have it with me. 1,647,000 something. So this will get it to about 647,000.
Is there anything that you wanted to specifically highlight, John, or talk about specifically?
Unless there are any questions. We're holding claims, and that one spreadsheet kind of shows it has the March dates at the top to the left. And
after talking to John and finance office and others, looking at the 1 million that was discussed about whether it was under or over budgeted, there was a Munis spreadsheet that had been utilized to help determine what was needed and everything. And Mike had prepared that last year coming into this, and evidently there was an error in that Munis report that it's basically like a formula error in there. And so while I thought it was one thing, it's actually something different. So it was short. So anyway, the amounts that we thought was going to go into the account from premiums was actually a lesser amount due to that error. That error has been found and fixed, so we should not have that going forward. Through discussion, and I think I mentioned this maybe a little bit last time, I do think in the future, meaning now, well, not today, but this next fiscal year budget, when we're talking about estimating what the employer premiums are going to be and what we need them to be, and then the expenditures when we're building that budget for employee benefits, I think we need to have a little bit more discussion in BET. We've just kind of relied on numbers in the past, and usually they're really good, but I think moving forward, having more of a discussion will allow all of us to have a little bit better handle on it in the beginning, so that if we do have some issues down the road, we're all a little bit more up to speed from the get-go.
so that's really two issues drove this. Number one, less money in terms of revenue that was stated in the budget to pay expenses. And then our medical and prescription claims are estimated to be a little higher than they were as budgeted. So less money to spend out of revenue. Claims are estimated to go a little higher than budgeted, still less than last fiscal year. So that's what we're trying to make up that gap.
So do we anticipate this getting us through fiscal year?
No. So, right now we're holding $479,000 worth of claims we haven't paid. We'll get another one tomorrow. Estimated $373,000. It's on that sheet. So the million should get us into May and have about $231,000 to use in May expenses. But it looks like from my numbers, we'll need a couple more transfers. And I just base this all on what our actual averages are. So the $1 million will get us to the next meeting to discuss and kind of see how claims are playing out next month. But at the bottom of that, one's for May and then one's for June. So the $1 million gets us into May. We'll probably need another transfer in May and then possibly another one in June to get us through the end of the fiscal year. But right now I'm just focusing on getting us what we're holding paid and getting us into May so we can go forward.
So those totals that he's mentioning for May and June, I think they come up to just over 1.095 million if it plays out the way John is potentially anticipating that it might. Now, one thing, I did talk to John and looked at some of the numbers. Our most recent claim that came in was like 789,000, which was way higher than our next highest. Our next highest, I think, was like 589,000, and then the next highest after that was 509,000, and then all the others were between like 180,000 and 450,000. John's estimate includes that most recent claim of 789,000, which scaled our average for the year up significantly over what our average has been. That being said, that 1.1 million may go down because of that skewed number is really pushing everything up. But what John did was use the average of the entire year, which includes this latest check register that came in, which if that's the case and they continue to average up there, it would be a 1.1. Is that a fair statement?
Let me look just to make sure. So what I predict is $1 million transfer now to cover the claims that we're holding and pay the claims that we'll receive tomorrow. And then using the averages of all this fiscal year, average for medical claims, average for prescription claims, I plugged it in, and we need probably another 450,000 to get through at the May. And then if we stay on average, another 644,000 for June.
So another $1 million to get through the fiscal.
Yeah, basically.
If
they average out. That's why right now we have this first agenda item, and then kind of see how we go into May and see what the claims are, and then have another meeting, see what our averages are there.
I just know when, 2 or 3 weeks ago when John and finance, we were all talking about this, and Cody we were on the expense side over budget, 840,000 or something like that, and it's grown in 2 weeks to this because of this one for $789,000. So it's gotten worse, not better, but and this sheet, the highlighted ones are over 500,000, so it's not predicted, but hopefully that's the surprise for the year.
But we could be surprised.
We could, and guess what? It could go the other way too.
Yeah.
But hopefully it doesn't. But I just try to base it on our actual expenses this fiscal year, what we've seen, and just did a running average, and just plugged it in for the meeting dates we have left for May and June, and then just estimate expenses based on that versus the knowns, what money will come in to get through the fiscal year.
I just think it's important that we let all of our elected officials be aware that we're looking at that is a possibility going into the rest of the year. And also that this is anticipating paying all of our claims and not rolling claims into the next year, like what we kind of got accustomed to for several years, which was rolling into future fiscal years. This is anticipating paying all of those prescription claims and medical claims that come in this year, other than I think it's the last month or the last week. traditionally, yeah, but other than that, wouldn't be pushing any claims, so.
So if we hit averages, we're looking at a shortage.
Of 2 million from today.
At least,
Then we're gonna
a
be
little over that now,
somewhat
but
back in the same
Yeah,
scheme of things that we were at the end of last fiscal.
yeah, Christie mentioned just a minute ago, we've got 1.647 million in there. If we transfer the million now, we got 647,000. If the delta is what John thinks, if the averages play out and we do need the 1.095, then there is not enough in reserve to handle that.
So if I'm hearing it right, though, the 700, these big ones that you had highlighted in this most recent, this 790, it's now in the weekly average, right?
Correct, it's included.
And then, so you're using that weekly average to continue.
So again, we can take a fresh look at it after this, as we get into the first week of May and kind of see what came in and reevaluate for future requests. But right now, we know we're holding one claim register and we'll get another one tomorrow.
And I had asked John, I don't know what you guys think, but I think it might be helpful to see if our TPA can keep us kind of a little bit in the loop. We won't know exactly until the check registers come in, but if we do have large claims and they say, hey, just want you guys to know, in 4, 5, 6 months, you're probably going to get some claims in on this big ticket item here, and it could be 500,000, it could be $1 million. We don't know, but just so you know, you got these 3 or 4 that are out there pending, so we can kind of start planning and knowing what's in the foreseeable future, since we are operating on such tight margins in this account.
I don't know if this is appropriate under this item, but is there any, for the 600-something thousand that's gonna be left, is there anything on the watch list that we know that we're gonna have to pay for sure? Like, is there something on there that we're just, like legal expenses or anything that we're just holding there as a formality, but knowing secretly we're going to have to pay that?
Well, I will
Someone
say-
better speak up.
well, the DA's office was saying they expected to come back again during this fiscal year for more money, but I haven't heard a peep about it. And I'm assuming if they did, it's a big chunk of money. I just haven't heard anything. I've been kind of watching.
There is an amount, I don't have the watch list with me, there is an amount for outside legal on the watch list, but yeah, no one's, we do it every meeting, we say anyone.
No, Rod, when we gave him the one right after the fiscal year, he said didn't expect another one. But it may be that what we've allocated before was not used. I don't know. I just haven't heard anything from them in a long time, which makes me, I just don't know how prone they are to call them and saying, I need to have a meeting to ask for $500,000 or something.
Well, so the only outside legal cases that I've been part of a discussion about this year has been related to ongoing cases, no new ones. And even if we had some new cases, it would, for us to have outside counsel, the DA would have, of course, recused. So it would be a little bit of a special circumstance, number one. And number two, we're getting closer to the end of the fiscal year. If we did have that situation, unless it's like really soon, we could always push that into the next fiscal year. It's just a matter of when outside counsel would have to make motion of appearance on a case. And usually that's not like immediately. So we have a little bit there to get them on board, with a contract on that particular case. So we're getting kind of late in the fiscal year that I don't anticipate. Now, who knows? But
Right.
I would think that we would have started hearing some whispers about something if there was something sitting out there pretty imminent.
The only question I would like to get on the record for John is, if hypothetically this board did nothing and the budget board did nothing, what does that do to the employee benefits? Does it actually turn them off? Like, in other words, would providers stop paying?
Well, prescriptions are way more timely, so if we don't pay our
Yeah.
prescription claims timely, everybody's prescription cards will be, all 2,800 people who have one of our prescription benefit cards, they'd be turned off.
Yeah.
Medical claims, we can push some weeks. I pulled out some large claims that were kind of ones that had to be paid. So big claims, so you'll know there's some contractual obligations behind real large claims that the provider can claw back on some of the money. We eventually owe a lot more. So The big thing is got to pay the prescriptions timely. Medical, we can push out a little bit, but prescriptions we have to pay timely.
But to your point, it gets to a point where when we're pushing those medical out, some of those reduced costs that have been negotiated go away, and that same bill becomes more expensive.
Exactly. And then we always risk if we push them too far out, members getting turned into collections and other such things.
Yeah, we don't want that.
I'm having deja vu.
Just looking at the big numbers up there, one we've already asked about, which is the outside legal, right? And then what's general government utilities?
It's chilled water, I believe.
Yeah, it's just the unknown. We had escalating utility expenses, and so we didn't really know what we were gonna have. I've not received an update from anybody.
I bet Kelly would be hollering by
Yeah.
now. She's good at that.
Yeah.
And then the self-insurance fund, what?
Sure, who watches that for sure?
And then the court clerk employee thing.
Do we need to send another request out to have everybody review the watch list and bring that to our attention if there's something that needs to change from that?
I think we're
I
getting.
don't know who I asked.
Yeah, I know. I'm scared too. Let's not draw attention to it.
Yeah.
Asking my kids, do you want
I-
to stay out later? Do you want more candy?
$29,000 for your vacation.
I mean, is there a problem with asking them, do these things still stand? Not opening the list back up, but just
Right.
saying, help us handicap where you are on these items that are on there. That could prompt people to add stuff.
I just thought about it on the vicinity part. If you look on the DET, not the DET, but the Westport agenda at the monthly financial report, there should be a section for the utilities on there. Can you pull that out, Cassie?
Tomorrow's?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Which one? Be at the end of consent, it's the monthly report, right?
Go down, no,
Okay.
keep going down.
You're doing good. Okay.
A monthly report, 330. There should be a section for the vicinity in there.
It won't be on that.
And not on
page.
that
No.
one, there'll be a general government.
Keep going.
Warmer, getting warmer, warmer.
Right after the general fund.
It is.
Utilities.
The other utilities, 54,026, heating and cooling vicinity. They're kind of year to date and what their encumbrances.
Well, year-to-date actual is 408, and the budget 775. We're way past halfway through the fiscal year. I mean, and we're also out of the cold weather, so.
$21, it's one air conditioner.
And they were much smaller dollar, but it was like hot water heaters and stuff, if those go out, you gotta replace them, but it's not, 10,000 or,
Yeah.
it's not, it's huge amounts.
Okay.
But that's still, unless everybody puts off going to the doctor or something, we're still gonna have to find money.
Well, I think we are where we are right now. I think we need to have a little more discussion going into the FY budget year on what amounts are coming in and what expenditures there are. And then, part of it, I think I mentioned a little bit last time, and we can have more discussion when we're talking about the fiscal year budget. But, we say that we're budgeting, all of us say how many employees we have, and whether they're on insurance or not, and then we budget, put that money in our budgets, but we don't necessarily spend that money and put it into employee benefits unless we actually have that employee on insurance for that month. If we don't, then it doesn't go over there, but if we budget it to go over there and that money's not there, we may want to consider what types of changes we might want to make on how we do this process going forward, so that we assure whatever we're anticipating going in there to pay for anticipated expenses actually goes in.
Well, and that's, you made mention of some structural changes that have been talked about in the past, but I know we can't probably do it under this agenda item, but us making doing some research and some study and coming up with some scenarios and proposals for the budget board, we changed the mechanics of how we do benefits, how we get revenue into that, and some of those kinds of things are called for, I think, based on this. I mean, even if the report and the estimates on revenue side were off, we're still $1 million in the hole, potentially. Is there a way to, have a 5-year rolling average? Is there a way to, I don't know, do what that would help cushion against that?
I think to help,
seems like a worthwhile discussion.
To help make sure that we don't join us, please. To ensure that we don't get into this type of situation again, because we are dealing with two things. We're dealing with the revenue side issue, and then we're also dealing with, we never know exactly where our expenditures are going to be. And we're always going to be there on the expenditure side. But on the revenue side, if we can come up with some solutions, then we're only having to fight one battle instead of fighting multiple battles. So I do think that as we go into discussions of the fiscal year budget next week, I think is when we kick off estimate of needs discussions. There should be an agenda item on there to discuss policies and procedures. I think we should look at that, and all of us, bring forth ideas, whether we want to do a 5-year average, whether it's 2-year average, 1-year average, whether it's, kind of taking the general fund budgets that we pay for health insurance premiums out of, the employer share out of those, instead of putting those in actual department budgets, whether we just hold it and transfer it directly over to employee benefits. Just start thinking about some potential solutions. We can discuss them in here, kind of vet them, and we can always make a recommendation to the budget board. If we do want to make a change, we can make a recommendation to them outside of the actual budget recommendation that, we think that it would be more beneficial moving forward if we change our process. And one of those processes may be, I know we get into a front funding and then paying back because when cash comes in and when it's available, maybe it's, instead of having one budget board meeting a month, maybe we need to have I don't know that we do, but we may need to have a standing second budget board to appropriate funds for employee benefits, so that we're not, getting into a, moving money around and making it more difficult.
So, handbook committee is chomping at the bit to work on that, but to try to understand the numbers here, there is some additional money out there in the different departments to pay benefits that we will not see because the positions are not filled. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things. Is that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah.
So.
And one thing to point out, like Cody said, when I went to try to track the deposits and the revenue side of it, and that's really what the county does. But we upfront the fund every month with $1.5 million, and we have to pay it back. If there's any way we can get away from that, that would be a good thing to look at.
Explain that to me real quick.
I can't explain it. I'll let the county explain it.
I've read your emails and I try to understand it.
From my understanding is they front it from another month, but then deposits from certain periods are deducting from certain things. I'll let the experts talk about that.
What Okay, go ahead.
Oh.
I think this is something that we can
Okay, we can take it another
explain.
time.
It's just, there's another meeting gonna be in here, and there's also another meeting that's gonna be
Gotcha.
elsewhere in like 4 minutes, so.
I do have one question on.
Yeah.
John, on your sheet, the April, when you say current available balance of 4010, you've got 84,597.18. I assume that's an appropriation balance, not a
Correct.
cash balance.
That's appropriation. So when I run the year-to-date budget
That's why
report,
everyone to know, because there's more cash in the fund.
yeah, so when I run the year-to-date budget report out of Munis, it spits out that number and says, this is the money you have to pay things.
Okay.
And that's where, one of those things we all have to get on the same page so we
do.
know, yeah.
We need to be careful, because I'm showing there's, after the claims that went out today, there's like over 900,000 cash in that fund.
And see, when I went to try to figure out deposits, that's where I was hanging up, because we should have all this extra money. It wasn't there. Because we're deducting things, and so we can talk about that in the future, but there has to be an easier way to do that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? If not, there's a motion and a second on the table to recommend a budget board to transfer $1 million from reserve to employee benefits. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's unanimous. Ayes have it. Cassie, do you mind putting that on budget board? Thank
Cassie,
you.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Okay, we've got a motion. Any citizen participation? Board comments? None? Motion to reset or motion to adjourn? Somebody made one?
Yes, and second.
Motion